common, values in common. Let me find my notes here. Let me go back a little bit to say that I think that you're facing some challenges. That you probably know all of these things. People fear the other. People don't understand the other. There's this, as I said, immigration. People look with suspect upon immigrants. And there are certain people in the political arena who try to get political currency. They try to get political power from being anti-immigrant. That's just part of the America's DNA, for better or for worse. You know that. Christians surrendering their dominance. The religious landscape is changing in America, as the Pew study shows. It's difficult for Christians. What we found in Troy a few years ago on the National Day of Prayer is they didn't want Hindus or Muslims or anyone else on the National Day of Prayer, except Christians and the Jews, who they kind of need for their own. Christians believe that Jews are part of their salvation history. Eventually, Jerusalem will convert to Christianity, and so they kind of need them for the rapture. But for the most part, it wasn't an unconditional regard for Judaism. So, just recently, these Christians in Troy who are struggling, I mean, that's the second most diverse city in Michigan. 87 languages are spoken at the high school. And yet, the Christian group that's struggling with no longer being the dominant group wanted to push away the Muslims from this mosque, who challenged them to be a part of the Day of Prayer. Now there's a vibrant Troy interfaith group that members of this group, who was that gentleman, Mansour Ahmed? He was a member of that group and very helpful. I think 9/11, we don't need to say much more about that. Opportunities exist, though, with Keith Ellison becoming the first Muslim to the U.S. House, Victor Begg when he was elected to the Bloomfield Hills School Board, certainly Obama's presidency, Talabi, what's her first name? Rashida Tlaib, her being elected to the U.S. House, Michigan House. And Dr. Saeed Taj, who's in Canton, Michigan, the first non-white member of the Canton Board of Trustees, a remarkable victory. Of course, there the Indian, Pakistani, and Asian community is the largest minority group, but he worked hard, and he was elected. These are significant, this is very significant. So not only do people have doctors who are Muslims, but they have political leaders who are Muslims. But I do think that the situation in Israel will be tough for Muslims for a long time, because the media is going to present, I know I'm being taped, and so my Jewish friends are going to probably not want to be my friend anymore, but oh well, it is what it is. I think that because of the Middle East, the portrayal of Muslims is very negative. And they may say, oh, it's only the Shia or the Arabic Muslims, the Sunnis who are Indonesian, Pakistani, Indian, they're okay. You know, who's a good Muslim, who's a bad Muslim, but they cast suspect because of people's feelings about Jerusalem and Gaza and the Middle East. And that's tricky. That's a hard fight to be in. And just to be aware that people are looking at you differently because what they've been fed. There's fear-mongering in the Jewish community. That movie Obsession was shown almost in every synagogue, and it's horrible. It's horrible. So, many Jews need you more than they realize. They need to have Muslim friends so they can... You see, I think the soul is a muscle. I'm an athlete and a coach. Oh, former athlete. I got a little belly. But the soul, you understand what I mean? The soul is a muscle. A muscle, if you're going to strengthen, you break it down and build it up. And if they're given new information, if they have Muslim friends, they have to rethink their conclusions that they made about Muslims. You know, like my neighbor thinks Muslims are here to take over the country. He's got a gun in his basement. And I'm waiting for the right day to bring Najah Bazzi, my dear friend, because how could anyone not love or like Najah Bazzi? She's like the Mother Teresa of the Muslim world. She's wonderful. But this guy, I don't know. I don't know. Make sure the bullets aren't in his gun, but people are fearful. There's a lot of fear. Just not that you needed me to tell you that, but I hear that. I was with a local minister of the largest church in this area, a Christian, and he's doing missionary work in Africa. And I met with him, and he says, you know those Muslims, they're trying to take over Africa. There's a Muslim conquest of Africa. And I said, well, what are you doing there? Well, that's different. So, you know, it's two standards. The Christians do one thing, it's okay. I was just at the Yemeni mosque on Verna this morning, and they talked about their outreach and how we're giving Qurans to all the neighbors. I said, oh, okay. Don't be surprised if somebody tells you they're not happy with that, right? So maybe it's how you give the Quran. Maybe it's first becoming friends. and living the Quran rather than giving the Quran. Keith Ellison in this report said that for too long, and particularly after 9/11, Muslims have withdrawn into their own mosque-defined communities, denying themselves their rightful place in the fabric of America. Ellison wrote, "Being Muslim shouldn't need to be explained, but rather be observed, how each of us lives our lives and values we espouse." Let me read that last part again. Being Muslim shouldn't need to be explained, but rather observed by how each of us lives our lives and the values we espouse. Right? It's in the relationships that people are going to get more out of Islam than any email that's sent about what Muslims are like. They're going to know you. That they can't conclude all Muslims are terrorists or this or that because they know your smile, they know your goodness. You forgave them when they didn't deserve to be forgiven. You know, you went to their children's party, etc. Anyway, the perceptions of Islam need work. People think you're coming to take over the country. People think you treat women poorly. People think you can't be tried. You know all this stuff. So I say take it head on. Address these issues in symposium. Collaborate with people. Have Muslim women talking about how Islam is liberating, how they choose the hijab. I think that people are going to sponge. They're going to be sponges. They're going to take this information from you. God in common, the one God, charity, prayer, justice, family, modesty. I think many Christians are going to love reading Surah 49, if I get it right. Isn't that the one, O mankind, that made you different tribes and nations? Is it 49? Yes. See, us Christians don't even know our own Bible good. What am I doing trying to talk about them? But I think they're going to identify with that because that is the core of incarnation. You know, the mystery of the incarnation for Christians, that is, God chose to dwell within Jesus and make, through man, His love known to the world. And I think when I read Surah 49, it's bringing us to the other, where we'll discover Allah in our midst. So, you've got a lot to offer. Good luck telling the story. You're in my prayers, and thanks for your time. I'm sorry if I went long. Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for his comments and his candid insight. And he's definitely one of our local interfaith leaders and interfaith heroes. I would, before we open up to the floor, I'd like to pose a couple of questions to Steve to get the conversation going. And one issue that we, as a Muslim community, know that we are dealt with and many times we're concretized with is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And we know that much of the Islamophobia that is generated is by people who have vested interests in what's going on in regards to that conflict. For example, we know that the movie Obsession was distributed by a group, Eishai Torah, the Flaming Torah, which is an Israeli-based organization. We know that. But I would like to ask Steve, in regards to how he and how his colleagues view this conflict, if he could give us perhaps some positive feedback as well as some constructive criticism on our community discourse when we discuss this situation, because we know it's a political situation, but again, many people see this as a religious situation and something that is that reflects badly upon Muslims. So, be it from how we discuss this in regards to our community newspapers, to our speeches, to even the type of signs that we hold at rallies, for instance, and marches in regards to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Wow. Good thing you're paying me a lot of money for this talk.